Lamborghini Aventador, turning it into a front-engine V12. What have I done? Well, how's it going, everybody? Welcome back to a new video. And of course, we are going to take the 812 here and redesign it into a mid-engine 812 Superfast. Obviously, it's a big surgery that needs to go down here, and I'm going to show you the key things that needs to happen here. We can't just, as I said in the Aventador redesign, making it front engine, we can't just take the greenhouse and move it forward like this and call it a day. That is a very amateurish, I guess that's a word, approach. You see that it kind of looks okay, especially if we go back to the background layer and start to remove this part right here, like this. You can see that we're starting to get a feel of what this could actually look like here, but there is still a lot more that needs to be done on this redesign to make it a proper mid-engine car, and that has a lot to do with the proportions of the car, obviously, and the air intakes and outlets of the car. So if we go back here, let's just start from scratch and see what we need to do. If we start from scratch here with the Ferrari 812, we need to first of all, of course, move Rosie out of the way. That's step number one. So Rosie, thanks for saying hi. First of all, we need to take this greenhouse here and move it, slide the whole thing forward this way. And as you can see, the hood on the 812 is massive, so this is going to be quite a challenge to get this right and to reduce the length of the hood and kind of move the entire greenhouse forward. And what that's also going to to create is a different kind of C-pillar, and I think that is going to be the biggest challenge here, is to get this area right, because the C-pillar is going to dip. The A-pillar is going to start somewhere around here and then dip all the way here, which means that this whole part here is going to be removed, and then we need to figure out how are we going to integrate the C-pillar in a not so amateur looking way. We need to make it look Ferrari in every sense that we can, and that means it needs to have some line flow in pretty much every single change that we make to this car. We also have this big air outlet right here, so the air goes in here and then it comes out right here. I want to keep this because I like this shape, and it's very typical for the 812. And since I want the mid-engine design of this car to be very I want you to immediately see that it's an 812. I want to keep the big graphical features of the 812 in the mid-engine version as well. And this would actually have some function to it, because we would have some air outlets here that would still have a function. For example, it could reduce the air pressure inside the wheelhouse right here in high speeds. But what I want to add to this, and what we need to add to this, since it's a mid-engine car now, is we need to add an air intake right somewhere in this area right here. And I kind of want to have it be mirrored, this design here. So we have the almost exact same curvature, but going the other way, something like this. And this could probably connect to the graphics in the C-pillar. So the graphics of the integrated wing here in the C-pillar and the hole right there, we could copy kind of that shape of that air intake and have that be the same kind of intake down here in the body of the car, and then have those lines connect somehow. That we need to explore more as we go along in this video. Another thing that I want to talk about is the difference between Lamborghini mid-engine cars and Ferrari mid-engine cars, and specifically the A-pillar, and where the A-pillar dips and how it starts and how it connects to the line that is the hood. So on Lamborghinis we have a very wedge shape, which means that the hood of the car, it continues. If you look at a Lamborghini from a side view, a mid-engine Lamborghini from a side view, you have the hood line go something like this, and then it almost immediately goes into the A-pillar and then dips, something like that. But that's not how Ferrari does it. Ferrari, they like to have a bit of a dip before it goes into the A-pillar. I want to cut the hood from this part right here. So remove this, but then I want to have this lower and longer forward, so it stretches down more like a 488 or a 458 or the F8 Tributo that has these kind of hoods. And then on top of that, I want to have the fender line dip before we go into the A-pillar and create something like this. And that's the biggest difference if you look at a Ferrari compared to a Lamborghini in side view. The Lamborghini has a very chiseled front end and profile, while the Ferrari has a dip from the front fender and then it continues in to the A-pillar. So these are just a few changes that we're going to make when we make this redesign. There's a lot to think about, more than you might expect. But it's all in the details, and this also has to do with the rear end here, which needs to be changed, obviously, to fit a mid-engine or rear-engine Ferrari. So with all that said, let's get in, and we're using Photoshop, of course, as always. And let's see how this redesign is going to turn out. So now, if we compare the design of the most recent Ferraris compared to just, let's say, 5 or 6 years ago, for example, the A12 Superfast here, and we compare it to the F12, for example, and then we compare the F12 to, what was it, the 550 Maranello, I think, or the 575 Maranello, we see that the design language of Ferrari is kind of getting more and more complex with more and more lines. Just compare this, the A12, to the 575 Maranello, for example, and I feel that this is a trend that is kind of big now within pretty much every single car manufacturer. But the good news is, I think we are reaching a point where we can't style the cars anymore. We have added so many lines to the bodies of the car that if we add more lines, we're not going to recognize it as a car anymore. It's not going to be, it's definitely not going to get any more beautiful by adding more lines, and that's just my opinion. And I get asked this a lot through DMs and emails. Does a beautiful car have to have as few lines as possible, or can you add a bunch of lines to a design and still call it a beautiful car? Of course you can, and I think I talked about this in the Aventador video as well, which you can go check out. It's a few weeks back, so it's pretty easy to find that one. But yes, you can have a bunch of lines in your car designs. That's not the problem at all. But when you start to add lines just for the sake of adding more lines to a car that doesn't connect to any other graphical element or line on the car, if you have a line in the front end of the car that just starts somewhere and then just fades out, and you have no connection to that line anywhere else in the car, that to me doesn't make sense, and it sometimes completely ruins the design of a car. An example for that is the two most recent cars that I've talked about this problem is the DC Avanti and the Fenir Super Sport. I think both of these cars have the issue of overstyling their cars to the point where the lines just doesn't make sense and the proportions just looks way off, and it's not a beautiful car. And that's the difference, I think, between, you often see this problem in smaller car manufacturers where they don't maybe have the resources or the design knowledge and feel to create a beautiful car. And it also has to do with the lack of history in a brand. I think that plays a big role in the inspiration for new designs as well, to look back at old designs and kind of modernize those and interpret them in a new way, and that's how you create new models. If you're a brand new company you really don't have any history to look back on or any design DNA. You have to come up with everything from scratch. But that does not give companies the right to think that adding more lines to the car is going to make it more beautiful, because that's just not the case. My favorite Ferrari right now, and I think this, I hope at least, it's an indication of how Ferrari is thinking, is the Ferrari Roma. I think that's a beautiful looking car. Yes, it has a lot fewer lines than the A12 and the F8 and all of the, pretty much every single new Ferrari at the moment. And I'm happy to see that, because it feels like they may be stepping back with the styling of the cars. Because yes, some of these features, they do have an aerodynamic function, or, you know, something that enhances the performance of the car. But you still have a Ferrari Roma with a sleek body and not overstyled at all, and very clean lines, and it still has the same or similar performance as the previous Ferraris with overstyled lines. So I hope Ferrari is bringing that back, because I don't want Ferrari to become Lamborghini. Lamborghini's design language has been outrageous since the Countach of the 80s and 70s, so that's their style. So I don't want Ferrari to become another Lamborghini with lines and sharp edges everywhere, because to me Ferrari is the more sensual brand and Lamborghini is the wild, crazy brand of the two. So that's just my kind of thought process on where Ferrari is headed and what I think about these lines, a bunch of lines added on the cars. It's not a big problem if they have a function and if they flow well in the design overall, but adding lines for just trying to create a new identity by just adding a bunch of lines to a car never makes sense, and it's never a good idea. And there we have it. That's the redesign of the 812, turning it into a mid-engine supercar. I'm really happy how this turned out, and this result here, I think it looks really cool. The front end has that dip where the Cavallino Rampante badge sits. You see the dip there, and that's where the A-pillar starts. And that's probably my favorite area of this whole design, is that connection, the A-pillar that goes into the fender. That to me is typical Ferrari lines. And then I wanted to, as I said, mirror the air outlet that is in the front of the car, right by the door, and I want to have that mirrored and create an air intake that kind of has both a soft and a sharp feel to it. It feels a little bit like the Ferrari Enzo with the sharp edge right there. And that, of course, creates this fender line in the rear that adds some beefiness and stance to the rear end. The biggest challenge I had here was, as I said in the beginning, was how to incorporate or how to integrate the C-pillar into the body. So what I decided to do was to look at old Ferraris and kind of have those similar wings that just melts into the body of the car, and have something similar to that. But this was a lot of fun, so thank you for the suggestions to make this redesign. I hope you enjoyed it just as much as I enjoyed making it. If you stayed to the end, my guess is that you did enjoy it, so feel free to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you are new. You can browse over 200, I believe, redesigns we've made on this channel right now, and see if you find any other ones that you like. I'm TheSketchMonkey, thanks again, and I will see you in the next video.